Hey everybody, we're going to continue reading Who Let the Gods Out. We're going to continue with chapter 6. Chapter 5, we left it with Virgo crashing through the cowshed roof. Elliot found her, brought her inside. They tried to have a chat and work out who each other were, but it didn't really work, and they both called it a night and ended up going to bed. So chapter 6, the swimming lesson. Despite his tiredness, Elliot had a lousy night's sleep. The thought of Virgo, or whatever this weirdo called herself, stealing the family silver kept him tossing and turning for half the night. The fact that he had already sold all the family silver helped him sleep for the other half. But the new day had barely broken before Elliot was pulling on his clothes and heading downstairs. He expected to find Virgo snoring beneath the patchwork quilt that had hid the holes in the sofa. But as he reached the bottom of the stairs, she was already wide awake and in front of the telly. The sofa didn't appear to have been disturbed, but nor did Virgo show any signs that she had been awake all night. "Morning?" said Elliot cautiously. "Good morning, Elliot," said Virgo, scowling at the telly. "I hope you had a better night than I did." Elliot was about to launch into a tirade of about how, no, actually, a delusional stranger breaking into his cowshed had rather disturbed his evening. But something more important just struck him. Virgo was watching the telly. It had electricity. "What? How?" he mumbled sleepily, trying to find the words, and yet it was still hard for him to wake up. "I might say, even your hospitality puts these fellow mortals to shame," Virgo began, clearly relishing the chance to moan. "The little people who live in this box are incredibly rude." Elliot glanced at the soap opera Virgo was watching as he pondered how the power had come back miraculously and restored his home. "I had been trying to make conversation with them all night," she huffed, "but I have been completely ignored. I didn't mind so much earlier when some of them had to go and fight werewolves. These things happen. But these people are downright stupid. Take this woman, for instance," she said, pointing at the well-known soap opera actress. I have been trying to advise her from running away with this man, but she would not listen. Now she's trapped in a car with someone who killed his own mother only 20 minutes ago." "Oh, I understand justice all right," said Elliot. "Our systems are perfect, and they have been for over 2,000 years, replied Virgo. "Doing something wrong for a long time doesn't make you perfect," said Elliot. "It just makes you wrong." "I don't expect you to understand," said Virgo, "but those are the rules." "Your rules suck," said Elliot. Suck what?" said Virgo. "Your rules. Your rules are stupid," Elliot spelled out. "How dare you?" huffed Virgo. "They are not, and I will follow them." "And do you always follow the rules?" asked Elliot. Virgo paused. Yes I do," she eventually answered, and Elliot immediately recognised a fellow liar. "Ah, perhaps these are a mortal delicacy," as Virgo was leaning down to pick up a cow poo. "It's not really to my taste, but maybe I'll give it a try." "No!" shouted Elliot, holding Virgo back before she tucked into the cow pat. "Just leave that stuff alone, all right?" "So, wait, why are you taking him this flask? Why not just leave him there to rot?" "All immortals are entitled to ambrosia, even prisoners," said Virgo. "We need it to stay young. Otherwise, we'll just get older and older and eventually start falling into bits without even dying. That is an immortal's worst fear. Also, it's a bit of a litter hazard. Ambrosia is a basic right." "But so is freedom," said Elliot. "You're just going to give this bloke a drink and then leave?" "Oh no," replied Virgo. "I'm going to throw the flask at the prisoner and then return to Elysium. The rules strictly forbid any contact with the prisoner." "But that's just cruel." "Those are the rules." "Oh, wait. Hang on. We're here." Elliot had been so caught up in Virgo's story that he hadn't noticed that they had already reached the outer boundaries of Stonehenge. He had never understood the excitement about this prehistoric place with all these prehistoric lumps of rock, but now he knew that there was an immortal prison underneath, and it seemed a lot more attractive. With the busy summer season over and the sun only just peering through the stones, Stonehenge was eerily quiet. The only people present was Cyril, a lone guide who was on hand to answer any potential questions from any potential visitors, and two security guards enthusiastically evaluating a tabloid newspaper. Virgo turned to Elliot and placed her left arm on her right shoulder. By the way, farewell. I think this is that kind of gesture that constellations, or maybe all immortals, do. Well, thank you, Elliot the Mortal. Thank you for your begrudging hospitality and your cantankerous company. It has been curious knowing you, and I wish you well in your uneventful mortal life. Kind of rude by Virgo there. And with that, Virgo hopped over the barrier and strode towards a huge stone, set apart from the stone circle, which Elliot recalled to be called a heel stone. "Wait!" he hissed. "You can't do that!" 45 seconds. Fair play, the girl could hold her breath. She had come bursting out of the river with an almighty gasp. Any second now. Any second at all. Absolutely any second now. Elliot took off his jacket to warm her when she'd finally finished her silly stunt. Virgo might be a pain in the bum, but he didn't want her to catch pneumonia. 1 minute 15 seconds, Elliot's heartbeat quickened. He'd been so busy getting cross with Virgo, it suddenly occurred to him that she may actually believe all this rubbish. What if she really did think she was immortal, and that she was floating unconscious down the river somewhere, and he was standing on the bank like a lemon? He could be responsible for a life of a seriously unwell young girl. What would he tell her parents? What would he tell the police? 2 minutes now. Elliot was in full-blown panic. He stood by and let this poor, sick girl drain herself just because he had a crummy night's sleep. He was going to prison, and rightly so. He was a horrible human being. There was nothing else for it. He had to go in after her. Elliot kicked off his shoes, dropped his watch on the grass, and ripped off his t-shirt. He was about to lose his jeans, but looking at the mist rising from the cold water, he quickly thought better of it. With a deep breath of air and another for courage, Elliot plunged into the river. In the water, he was bit by 1,000 icy teeth. "Virgo!" he yelled, thrashing around. "Virgo, where are you? I believe you. Come out!" Once, twice, 3 times he dived beneath the murky surface of the water, but he couldn't feel or see Virgo anywhere. He stood breathless in the middle of the river, desperately looking for any sign of the girl that he had left to drown. He threw his hands into the water in despair. She had gone, and it was all his fault. "Let's hope you're immortal," called Virgo as she suddenly popped up from the water behind him and calmly walked out, picking up Elliot's shirt. She then dried her hair and then discarded it. You better get out of there, or you'll freeze to death." Elliot didn't understand. This was impossible. She'd been underwater for nearly 5 minutes. What? How? You should be... What? Well, here we go again, sighed Virgo. "Hello, I'm Virgo. Virgo, I'm an immortal. Shall we move on?" She helped the shivering Elliot out of the river. He then took her hands gingerly, as if he had suddenly seen Bigfoot. Virgo handed him his soggy t-shirt, which he put on himself, stunned. He trembled in confusion and in the freezing puddle. "Hold my hand," the young constellation instructed, and Elliot obeyed her in a daze. "I shouldn't really do this, but..." With Elliot's hands in hers, Virgo pulled her palms apart. At her touch, a million tiny stars crept from every millimetre of her body, curling into the air in wisps of light. The golden strands reached around both of them to warm them in a starry glow. But it was too late. Elliot watched Virgo merrily walk across the hallowed ground and stopped by the Hillstone, as yet undetected by Cyril, who was too busy looking around and picking his nose. When it says here hallowed ground, it's very like important ground, sacred ground. Not anybody can just walk on it. It's very, very special, which is why they have these guards here. Virgo crawled around the base of the stone, searching for something in the grass. "Elliot," she hollered, which caused Elliot to wince and Cyril to spin round. "Would you mind coming over here and giving me a hand?" It took Cyril a moment to comprehend the full horror of the scene before him, as a silver girl stood up and kicked the sacred Hillstone of Stonehenge. "Oi!" he yelled, reaching for his whistle. "Stop right there, you hooligan!" He blew 3 sharp blasts, which summoned the 2 portly but strong security guards from the car park, and who were now running straight at Elliot. There was no way he could get in trouble with the police. If they took him home to his mum, they might report her to the authorities. With Cyril approaching from the other direction, he had no other choice but to run towards Virgo at the Hillstone. Oblivious to all the fuss around her, Virgo was yanking up tufts of grass at the stone's base, tearing at the soil around the sacred stone, and threw it carelessly over her shoulder before she finally seemed to find what she was looking for. The word oblivious here is when you don't know what's going on. Because Virgo's pulling up all the grass and tearing at the soil, she doesn't know that there's these guards running at her. As Elliot skidded to a halt, he could see a small golden handle and an ancient-looking red keypad buried beneath the overgrowth. "Oh, bother," she snapped. "I don't have the passcode." "Well, make one up, quick," shouted Elliot. "We need to get out of here, now." "Ah, I bet it's the one Ares uses for the biscuit tin. He uses the same 4 digits for everything. It's funny, it's not really that secure." "Will you hurry up?" yelled Elliot, glancing over his shoulder at the fast approaching guards as Virgo pressed down on the keypad. "I knew it," she chirped as the keypad then turned green. "It's always the same 4 numbers. 2, 4, 8, 3. Capricorn's horns, 2 horns. Gemini's arms, 4 arms. And Scorpio's legs, 8. And then finally, Libra's IQ. It's a little bit of an insult here. IQ is almost like to test how intelligent you are. And the higher the number, the more intelligent you are. But Virgo is saying Libra's IQ is only 3 here, which is not very high at all. So Virgo's kind of calling Libra a bit stupid here. That golden ram is sure asking to be robbed. "What the?" Cyril pulled up in shock. Virgo had turned the handle and was now lifting the enormous rock as if it was made out of paper mache. Elliot saw that there was no other escape. As she raised the rock above her head, he launched himself at Virgo and bundled them both into the hole beneath where the stone was. It was a blind, frantic leap into the unknown, and Elliot's flying feet only just made it through the gap as the almighty Hillstone came crashing down and locked them into the darkness below. That's the end of this chapter. We'll pick up the story at the next chapter, chapter 7, where we might find out who Prisoner 42 is.